right. Well, hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. My name's John Harlow. You're watching Somerset Community TV, and today I have the guest, the pleasure of having our Wesley Clement, the author. He has written many books, and he's been on once before, and he has a new book to tell us about, so we're honored to have him here. Good morning. How are you?
Morning, John. Really, it's a pleasure to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to tell the community a little bit about my story, but also a little bit about what it's like to be 73 and not, rocking on the porch, but
Yeah.
actually staying active,
Yeah.
which I promote big time.
Yeah. So, for those who didn't see our first episode or
Yep.
our first sit down, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Okay. Well, I'm a local guy. Madison, Skowhegan, East Madison would be my sphere of influence, pretty much throughout my private life and my working life. I grew up in East Madison with 14 brothers and sisters, which is a story in itself, and in fact ends up being in my second book, and bring all that to light. But I lived a very interesting childhood, having three brothers in the same bed,
Wow.
two at top, two at bottom, and so I grew up hugging feet rather than a teddy bear.
Yeah.
Had a mother who was the most incredible lady, and how she was able to navigate that household with that many kids and still work and still maintain a positive attitude is, that it's what has given me, I think, a reason to reach out. If you can't celebrate that kind of an upbringing, I don't know what you could do. It was phenomenal. So anyway, I went to school in East Madison for a while, then Madison, then transferred to Skowhegan in my 7th grade. Graduated from Skowhegan, didn't have any idea what I was going to do. I'm going to give a shout out right now to Mrs. Merrill, who was the first teacher who was able to reach me as a human being and challenged me in a couple of different ways, and then ended up standing up for me and getting me into a college when there was no way I should have been able to get there grade-wise.
Yeah.
But when I got there, I really, learning took root. I'd always been a reader, but not a studier,
Yeah.
and had a good college career, and then became a teacher.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
So where would you have gone to school in East Madison? Was there a schoolhouse?
Yeah, in fact, it's in my second story. There was a little one-room schoolhouse right beside the old fire station is up there, and we had 4 grades in that building. And Mrs. Jackson was my teacher, and the East Madison Historical Society was kind of formed by her.
Yep.
And I dedicate that second book to her because she was an amazing person too.
Yeah.
So that's where I went to school, and I think she maybe gave me the real first foundation for learning.
Yeah. So you mentioned you had 2 people in your life, both teachers who were influential to
Very,
you.
very much so.
And then you went on to become a teacher yourself.
I became a teacher myself and a principal,
Yep.
athletic director.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And tell us a little about your teaching career.
Well, I actually kind of I talk about, the only time I really talk about my teaching career is in my 5th book, which was Pebbles from the Pond.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I used that as the takeoff point was because I spent 5 years teaching in Emden, Maine, in a trailer with 3 grades, 6th, 7th, and 8th, and 32 kids. And it became the most challenging piece of my career because I had every subject for all 3 of those grades, and there's no way you can do that.
And there's no break.
So I kind of mixed things up a bit, and we involved the community a great deal in the kids' learning.
Yeah.
And we had the kids learning peer learning a bit long before peer learning was considered favorable. And in that book, I decided to challenge myself even further to tell that story because I wrote myself in that book as a woman. Okay, Melody Standish. And what that did for me as a writer was it said, okay, yes, you lived this experience, but, and I was a teacher and the principal and the coach and everything that you could be, but I said, what further challenges would I have had if I had been a woman?
Yeah.
And there were many more challenges in
Sure.
1979, 1980 for a woman, especially as a principal.
Yeah.
And so in the story, she gets into some situations that probably would have been more difficult to get out of because she was a woman
Right.
than for a man.
Yeah.
And she got challenged in ways that I never would have been challenged. So that was an incredible piece. Those 5 years summarized all that I had ever done in education. I had done some other creative things. I opened school stores for kids
Yeah,
that couldn't
yeah.
learn back in Waterville, and had some opened whole game rooms. I was at Mount Blue Junior High for a couple of years as an assistant principal, and kids, we challenged their behavior, and we set up a real neat game room.
Yeah.
And if they acted right, then they had the opportunity to go down there during their study halls and play
Yeah,
various
yeah,
games. So it was all about trying to get kids to motivate themselves and find ways to do that.
Yeah, and it seems like through your writing, or excuse me, through teaching, you kind of learned a lot about human nature that gave you fodder for your stories that would later come.
Every character, pretty much, I shouldn't say that. There's a couple of characters that you couldn't, if you'd ever met them, you probably would not have survived the meeting. But for the most part, most of my characters were generated from my imagination of people I had in school,
Yeah.
or parents that I met, or friends that I grew up with, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I actually named some of them in some of my stories. They say you're supposed to keep everything under wraps, and I just said, you know what? Let them sue me. I'm telling the truth. If
Yeah.
they think they need to take me to court, more power to them.
Did you ever have anybody that you used in a story that knew that you had used it that either liked it or didn't like it?
I've only had one that didn't like it, and they know who they are. I won't name
Yeah.
them on TV. But everybody else has always been very supportive and felt like I'm immortalizing them.
Yeah,
In a way. If people continue long after I'm gone, these books are going to be in the libraries, and
Sure.
so when you hear, Troy Dunphy comes to mind.
Yeah.
He runs Troy TD Trucking up there.
Yeah.
I used him in 2 or 3 of my stories because he's a character.
Oh yeah.
So, no, everybody seems to
Yeah.
have taken it with the right attitude.
Yeah. I remember from our last interview, one of your characters was based on cancer,
Right.
and that,
Right.
because you
That
were talking.
became a very powerful character. My son-in-law was diagnosed with stage 4 Hodgkin's disease.
Mhm.
And so for my book, Troubled Waters, I was living in Florida and they lived in North Carolina at the time. And I
Now,
couldn't be there.
was this the first story that you wrote in Florida, or no?
No, both of them were written. My As It Lies I was in Florida at the time, and then this one I was in Florida.
Okay.
But I had put it on the back burner after that.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if I was going to continue writing, and then when my son-in-law got sick, I found that I had all these emotions going through me. Am I
Yeah.
going to lose my son-in-law? My daughter going to have to bring the kids back to live with us? All kinds of things went through my
Sure.
head. And so I created this story, Troubled Waters. And the character who represented the cancer in the story was Quentin T. Spence, who was a terrible, terrible person.
Right.
All right? But I had to have somebody that powerfully bad, if you will, in order to let people know how bad cancer is.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, when my sisters read that story, they called me Bobby,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Bobby, how could you write something that dark? I said, sister, how dark is cancer?
Yeah.
All right, and that kind of quieted them down,
Yeah.
But they didn't want to read about anybody being that twisted.
Right.
But that's the real world.
It is, and a lot of times, the phrase "stranger than fiction" exists, but also darker than fiction, or
Absolutely.
could be true
Yeah.
as well.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So that came from a disease, that
Yeah.
particular character. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have a lot of strong female characters in your stories. What's the motivation for that?
I think my mother,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, yeah.
unconsciously.
Right.
She had little sayings for us as we grew up. Act as good as you look. And then behind that was a threat. All right? You better act as good as you look. She had all kinds of little homilies and things written around the house. And she was the strongest woman that I ever knew. And so, I mean, I've never met anybody in anywhere that is as strong as her. So I think unconsciously. Plus, I respect women.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I really feel like they are a power unto themselves. You know, they're the ones who have to have these babies, and they're the ones who have to.
Yeah.
They're the ones that take care of the house.
Yeah.
They're the ones that do the shopping. Now, it doesn't mean that the man can't be real supportive and do all that he does.
Yeah.
But as a general statement, I would have to say that women play an incredibly powerful role, whether we want to admit it or not, and we don't give them credit for it.
I agree with that. And going back to teaching, a lot of, especially in the older times, a lot of teachers were women for the most part.
Yeah.
I remember one interesting thing that you told me about your teaching career was you were the principal at Carabec when Madison High School burned.
Yes.
And what year was that? 1980?
Oh, let's see. That would have been like 80, 85, 86, 87, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what was that like? Because
Well, it was interesting because I actually have to do a little aside here, right? I'm kind of a jokester.
Yeah.
So my kids didn't live with me during the week. They lived down with their mom, and my stepson lived with us. And so they're all there on a Saturday morning that happened to be April Fool morning, right? So they're all up in bed, and of course they're teenagers. They're not moving, not for a long time.
Yeah.
So I run up the stairs and I scream into the room, "Come on, quick, get up, get up, get up. Madison High School's burning." Right? So, well, come on. Everybody's got to go help. So they all trundle down the stairs. They get in the car. We were living on the lake at the time.
Yeah.
I get them in the car, drive up to the end of the fire lane, look left, look right, and then look back. And I said, "April Fool." They were so angry with me. Well, it wasn't a terribly long time after that Madison High School burned.
Yeah.
And I was
So you had already cried wolf once.
Exactly. So I was the principal at Carabec, and immediately I knew what needed to be done. I knew that there was no place for these kids to go.
Yeah.
And so we reached out and invited them and completely changed our schedule around.
Yeah.
We went to school like early in the morning.
Yeah.
And then they came in around 2.
Yeah.
And so for that year, basically we abandoned our building at 2:00, all the teachers and all of us, and that has an impact, on kids. In terms of we gave up obviously something.
Yeah.
But we also, showed what being a good citizen is all about.
Definitely.
And so for that year, they spent the year there, and it was I made friends with, both communities certainly.
Yeah.
And
Was it Tony Kraft?
yeah, in fact,
Yeah.
Tony hired me at that point.
Right.
To come down and be his assistant principal in that new building.
Yep.
And be the athletic director.
Yeah.
And so I said, yeah, I wanted that challenge. So I went.
And how long
with
did
him.
you
And
do
so
that for? How long were you in Madison?
5 years.
Yep.
Yep. 5 years.
Yeah.
And a couple of state championships. Very, very, at that time, Madison was flying high.
Yeah.
And having a lot of success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And talking about your own personal education, did you go to Thomas?
Yes.
And what made you want to be a teacher?
It was kind of a default position because I didn't even know, like I said, if I was ever going to get into college. And that was the one that happened to be. There was a guy that used to coach and live in the area by the name of Andy Speed. Andy Speed was a teacher, and he also was the football coach, and he had Camp Happy Days. You probably never even saw it. Yeah. Out towards Norwich Walk on the right-hand side, out where the Licensed Auto was out there.
Yeah.
There was he had ran a camp out there called Camp Happy Days. And they had dances and stuff out there. Well, anyway, he reached out, and at that time he was doing some work at Thomas College,
Mm-hmm.
and so Mrs. Merrill knew him, and so I'm not sure how that all transpired, but they accepted me at Thomas. So I get there, and again, I have no idea who I'm going to be or what I'm going to be, but I knew I didn't want to be an accountant. That was the that's their claim to fame, or
Yeah, right.
some other type
Yeah,
of business,
yeah.
and so I just kind of kept hanging in there, gravitating, and finally I had to declare a major, and I went into education, and I never looked back.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful career to be a family man in,
Yeah.
because I not only did I end up enjoying the curriculum and kids, but I also had a lot of free time with my own kids,
Yeah.
vacation
Yeah.
and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. From our previous conversation, I remember, and it seems like it's been kind of a trend in your life where you don't want to settle for less. You said that you worked at Norwalk Shoe, and that's a fine profession, but you realized you didn't want to do that the rest of your life.
Right. Yeah.
And it seems like with your writing, it was the same way. You didn't write your first book until quite later on.
Right.
And after retiring from teaching and all that, you said, well, I don't want to just, and that was the first thing you kind of said when we sat down. You don't want to just sit there and watch life go by, kind of.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I've had, and I'm not exaggerating, well over 100 different jobs, okay, in my lifetime, and I could go right through them. But that same thought that you just expressed was that I wanted to learn more about different things.
Yeah.
Okay. Since I retired, I sold cars.
Yeah.
Okay. I just got my real estate license, by the way, this last year,
Yeah.
since I went back, and I was a bully specialist. Okay. I worked at a golf course. Different things. I did some cooking on the ocean for a while. And then I was assistant manager for a fast food place.
Yeah.
So it's like
all
I'm
different
always
range of things.
branching out, and and I worked in a hotel as a night guy cleaning the joint
Yeah.
at night, the rooms and all that. All that since I retired, plus the writing and all that. So
What were you doing when you decided, okay, I'm going to write a book?
I was actually working at a golf course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was sitting on the back of a cart in a hot day, and the Irish banker. I mean, I'm splayed out.
Yeah.
It's hot,
Yeah.
and nobody's moving. So I'm just kind of laying there like an old dog. He walks by and he says, "What are you going to do with the rest of your life?" He didn't even wait for an answer. He went in and got his drink. Came back out. I said, I always wanted to write a book. And he said, well, get off your butt and start writing. I went in and got a paper bag. That's all that was there in the cart barn. And I started writing as it lies. I never stopped until it was done. And he became a main character in the book. And the story became an Irish story because he was an Irish banker.
Yeah.
And it's really weird how the mind works.
Yeah.
And you start putting thoughts together.
Definitely.
And it's a really neat story. In fact, that particular book, back when Mr. Paperback existed, I was in all 16 Mr. Paperback stores, and we did pretty well with that book.
Yeah, it's too bad that the local bookstores are
Right.
We don't have them as much.
It's so hard to get into, like Barnes and Noble, and
Yeah.
even they're going. They're all diminishing.
Yeah.
Books a Million and all those are really there's less and less of them, and they want you to have like 50,000 books. All right, so they can put them on, but if they don't sell, guess what?
You
got
get 'em
to
back.
take them back. And I don't have that kind of revenue to be dealing with that. Now, if you try to find a major publisher, which I did, I spent over $4,000 2 years ago, and got myself an author coach.
Yeah.
And we got into how to write a synopsis that's going to attract attention. And I sent some of my books out to those synopses and stuff out to hundreds of agents.
Yeah.
And you have to capture their imagination within the first 5 seconds because that's all they're going to give you, and then they just write back and say thanks but no thanks, da da da, and I got a lot of those. And so at that point in time, I determined that, if I was a man in my 40s and this was going to be this long, long career, I would probably dig deeper and do other things. But I decided that at that point, I'm writing for me.
Yeah.
And for an audience of people who like to read, and I operate out of the trunk of my car.
Yeah.
And it's been okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a book signing actually next Saturday up in the East Madison Historical Society.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Coming full circle.
and next Friday night I'm going to do a book talk at up there.
Oh, okay.
And then they've got some band coming in to play.
Yeah.
And so before the music, I'll give them a little narrative. And then in
That's good for our audience. When it what's the date and time of that?
yeah, it's the 19th, and I think it's like at 5:30.
Yeah. So
And then the next day is like 9 to 12.
Okay.
That I'll be doing the book signing. And then in August, I think it's the 25th and 26th of August, the Madison Anson days.
Yeah,
Anyway, I'll be in Anson on that Friday, and I'll be in Madison on that Saturday again, talking with.
Yeah. Are you gonna have like a booth set up? And...
Yeah, they set me up right beside the Skowhegan Savings Bank.
Yep.
I have a little table out there right under the trees.
Nice. Yeah.
Pretty cool. I did pretty well there last year, and again, even if people didn't buy a book,
Yeah.
I got to reconnect with so many people
I bet.
from my life. So yeah, so I'm doing those two.
Yep.
Yeah.
And are you going to be at Riverfest doing anything?
Well, I want to be at Riverfest. I've tried to reach out to them. I can't seem to, for whatever reason. And I was there for a short time last year. They actually set me up in the Miller's table.
Yeah.
We didn't do any business, but I'm going to try to go down to their office and see if I can get on. They do again artists kind of thing one of those days.
Yeah.
Try to get onto that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of people that go through Skowhegan.
Well, and I must, adult-wise, that's where I spent my.
Yeah.
So I know a pile of people.
Definitely.
From down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now so this latest book
Yeah.
that you just finished. You want to tell a little bit about that?
Sure. There's an old English nursery rhyme,
Okay.
right? The house that Jack built.
Yeah.
Okay. And for whatever reason, all of a sudden, the first line of that nursery rhyme came to me. This is the house that Jack built.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd just had a couple of hurricanes
Yeah.
in Florida, right near where I live.
Yep.
And they did unbelievable amount of devastation.
Oh, I bet.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And I describe it in the story. But I describe it as a monster because that's what it was, taking great big bites out of A1A, a mile of A1A right down in Flagler Beach for him. Just took a, and then it's trying to swallow all that water, right, and all that tar, and it starts picking its teeth on all the walkouts to the ocean, all the wooden walkouts down there.
Yeah.
So it beat those to devil, took like splinters, like picking his teeth on those things all the way up through, all the way to South Carolina, and then kind of spit it all out in South Carolina. And I don't know if you recall or not, but I mean, it devastated the lowlands of South Carolina with water.
Yeah.
Flooded it dramatically.
Yeah.
And that was all that water was coming from our area.
Yep.
Well, anyway, I wanted to tell that story, and so I had to figure out how I wanted to tell it. And I thought, well, what better way to tell it than to have a guy who's going to be doing some of the repair work on some of this stuff, a carpenter.
Yeah.
So I created this guy who's a carpenter.
Yeah.
And he's a great guy, and
Yeah.
everybody loves him. And he actually came from Maine.
Yeah.
All right, he got brought down to Maine, from Maine to his senior year of high school, and anyway, he ends up doing well there, and gets married, has a family, but so it's like all roses, right?
Mhm.
But then he has a little boy who experiences a childhood disease that goes wrong, and the little boy becomes deaf.
Mm.
All right, and that made him realize the importance of of life,
Yeah.
rather than everything's not just a nice even keel. There are going to be challenges, and the way the little boy adapts to his challenge is motivating for the father as
Yeah.
well. The little boy is gifted,
Yeah.
and why is he gifted? Some people would say, well, you lost one sense, and so others are magnified, or you're born this way, or whatever.
Right,
Well, anyway,
right.
we don't really ever decide that. But the little boy is telling a lot of this story, okay, through his
Yeah.
own eyes,
Yeah.
and then there's other adults tell him the story of things that he doesn't get to see.
Yeah.
But in general, we're all moving towards a time when things change for Florida. Things change in the construction business for this guy. And we bring some characters who are less than savory
Yeah.
into the conversation. And so that becomes the mystery of what happens to a couple of girls during these storms. All right?
Right.
How did they get to where they are, and what happened to them? And of course, the storms cover up a lot of that. Okay, you don't find things immediately after the storm. People's attention are taken by trying to recreate their own lives and what
Yeah,
happened.
yeah.
Okay, and so these girls kind of get lost in the storm in more than one way.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, and then I wanted to one of the characters gets himself into some really, really, really hot water. Not in a traditional way. All right. I mean, you can have somebody who just starts out as bad.
Right.
All right, and they plan to do evil.
Yeah.
Or you can get somebody caught up in a situation where they make a wrong choice.
Right.
All right, and then they get scared,
Mm-hmm.
and they feel like they try to cover it up, and then it kind of gets to the point where it starts to define them.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to tell that as part of this story.
Yeah.
And good versus evil, and then bad luck and good luck, and somebody redefining themselves who found themselves at the bottom of the barrel, but picks themselves up by the bootstraps. That
Yeah.
was another character, okay, and trying to get what a normal life would look like back.
So are those a lot of themes that you explore in your other books too? Because I know you mostly deal with like a mystery or a
Right.
conflict that ends up usually getting resolved.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? The desire to write about
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
kind of topic.
Right. Well, I guess in our own lives,
Yeah.
we some may not be that major, but we all. This guy over here is dealing with his vehicle not running this
yeah,
morning,
yeah.
and he's going to have to at the point leave here and figure out how am I going to get this back together,
Right. Yeah.
Well, he didn't plan on that happening.
Yeah.
All right, it just happens.
Yeah.
And we don't plan on having somebody in a marriage say bye bye,
Right.
or we're downsizing the job,
Yeah,
a company.
yeah.
So how do you react to that?
Well, one thing I noticed that there's a similarity, because most of your novels they have a connection to Maine and to Florida, and there's a similarity where Maine is vacation land, but under the surface there's a lot of things that happen either behind the scenes or stuff that people don't necessarily notice on their first look, but
Right.
it's something that most people go through at one time or another, some
Sure.
type of issue.
There's really not anything in any of my books, and I think that was part of by design or whatever. Anybody could be experiencing any of these scenarios in any of my 6 stories.
Yeah.
Okay. Any given day.
Yeah.
And how would we react to it?
Well, they're all from life.
Right.
All of these are
Yep.
are
Yep.
inspired by true stories,
Right.
really, for the most part.
Some people have said that, you're the next Stephen King. Or, you want to be the next Stephen King. And I said, no. Stephen King is a master at what he does, okay? But his thinking is so far removed, okay, from the way I think, okay, and he's effective in what he does in his writing because he actually challenges you to go beyond what would be the normal way we go about our day and whatever. And he creates, can create evil and he can create horror and he can do all those things. And, he's a master at it.
Yeah.
I would be faking it, okay, if I tried to recreate that kind of a thing. And so they say we write what we know.
Right.
All right. And I write based on things that I've either experienced or I've heard about, I've read about, I know about, just life.
Yeah, and that goes right back to being a teacher, and you've got 30 kids in your room, and they all have their own experiences and lives and stories, and you look at each one and say, this could be its own novel itself.
Right.
And so you draw a lot from real life and from experiences of people or people that are like This Old House that's the one that's a lot about your family.
Our family, right?
And it goes. Anybody who grew up in rural central Maine could have a big connection to that story because
probably my most popular book.
Yeah.
Whenever I do book signings, people start to ask me about two or three of them, and I'll mention that, and they say, "Oh my God, this I had a family that didn't have indoor plumbing, or I had a family that did this or that," and so that's probably been one of because we all want to reconnect, kind of thing,
right.
and so that one probably allows people to do it more so than any others.
And then another one that we haven't talked about today is Are You Going to the Skowhegan Fair?
Yeah.
And that one is pretty popular, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And for good reason. I have that one, and I liked it a lot, and the whole it's a mystery, and it's feels like something that could have happened to yourself or somebody that you know, or it feels true to life.
Yeah, and that was my reconnection to a time that I didn't even realize it at the time was maybe one of the more traumatic episodes of my life, and I didn't realize it until later what an impact the assassination of John Kennedy had, okay, and how it has stayed with me all these years and it defined me and defined my politics. And we were seniors in high school. We were supposed to be flying high, and all of a sudden we're taking a back seat to all these things. Vietnam is bubbling up. Well, guys are coming back in body bags, guys that we knew, guys that were our heroes in high school. And so Maine was rural and innocent. Okay, that innocence was lost that year.
Absolutely.
Right? And you can't. At least I couldn't. I can't say, today my life was changed forever. Okay. But subtly, and over time, and in your approach to things.
And as you reflect on.
It has an impact.
For sure.
And I still. How many things can you say? I was here on this day, and this is exactly what I was doing at that time. And over the next 4 days, this is exactly what I was doing. There aren't that many.
No.
But that was a defining moment for so many people in this country, whether they were a fan of the president or not. We hadn't had an assassination, for a long, long time. And then the mystery that surrounded that, of course. Did he do it by himself? All right. Of course, we don't know. He got taken out. And then the guy that took him out leaves us. And so you had all of these. And again, do we trust our government? All right. That I think that might have been the downward spiral. Okay. For people having less and less belief in their government, that they're not. We can't be trusted with the truth.
Yeah.
All right. Those were all very much things that impacted my life going forward.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I can imagine. I never. What I lived through, I would say that would be any close to that would be September 11th.
Absolutely.
And I was only in 5th grade.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't quite have the consciousness of saying, do we trust our government? All of those same questions of who did it, why, did they act alone, and all of that kind of stuff. And the world changed, especially the United States changed a lot after that.
Incredibly changed. You know, our approach to immigration and our acceptance.
Flying.
Our acceptance of people of different ethnic groups, all has changed.
Yeah.
Again, those that support and those that don't support, kind of thing. Definitely we've become much more polarized.
Yep.
Less trusting.
Yep.
Absolutely. So yeah, definitely, that's a good point. A great point that you reached in your life because of it. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we've been going for about a half an hour.
Okay.
And I think we've pretty well gone around in circles about you and your life and these books and what you have coming up. You're going to be at Madison Anson Days.
Right.
And you're going to be giving a book talk at East Madison Historical Society coming right up. Possibly we'll be in Skowhegan at some point, maybe.
Yeah, I'm going to work on that. Yep.
But it's a pleasure to have you. And do you have anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't cover?
No, I encourage people to read.
Yeah.
Okay, whether it's my books or any other books.
Yeah.
There's no other form of communication that allows you to synthesize what's coming at you. We're getting bombarded constantly with messages, and if you take it in, and it's there and it's gone, and either it sticks or it doesn't. But when you read something, if you're not sure, you can go back and check it again. Okay, and it allows you to takes you to a place that you don't have to answer any questions.
Yeah.
You just go there and enjoy. You're on vacation, so to speak, in your head, and do with it what you will. So read. I would love to think that we're going to recreate that opportunity for kids in this country again, because it's very quickly going by the board.
Yeah. And do you ever go into schools or anything?
I have not. Not for years. I haven't. I did for a while. I went to nursing homes in Florida.
Yeah.
And I did a what do I want to call it? Kind of a recollection kind of a course where I was trying to encourage them to get in touch with people from their own past, maybe jot some things down if they haven't. If they've got a relationship that's gone south over the last 20 years, we're on borrowed time. It'd be a good time to fix it. And I did that for a while. We sang songs, again, reconnecting them with old music and stuff, because I went to places that a lot of them had memory issues and other types of issues. And the idea was to get them back in touch with their siblings.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did go to the Reddington home once here too.
Yeah.
And speak.
Yeah. And one other thing before we wrap up here, that I remember that you said that was interesting is talking about memory and reconnecting and all that kind of stuff. For your first book, or not for your first book, but for This Old House, I remember you told me that you didn't want to be
the teller of the tale.
The teller of the tale and have that responsibility of telling it for everybody. So you got all your brothers and sisters that are still here to kind of talk about their memories and give you information and stuff that you could incorporate. And also, your mom kept a diary.
Right, absolutely. Of course, with 14 kids, my my experiences and memories were very different from, say, my older brothers and my middle
Right.
sisters and all that.
Where do you fall in the?
I'm number 10,
Okay.
so they're five younger than I.
Yeah.
But yeah, my sister Patty sent me her recollections, and in it she sent me my page from my mother's diary, and I actually put it in the book. But I was amazed. I didn't know my mother kept a diary,
Yeah.
and she did. She had us encapsulated, really soon in life, and she told me in the diary that I was creative and sensitive, and liked plays and all that,
Yeah.
and so she was giving me permission to
Yeah.
write the story.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was just shocked to see it. And anyway, so that became the reason I felt comfortable in doing it. And I have to say that my brothers and sisters have all felt really good about
Yeah.
the story.
Yeah.
And it keeps our family alive for forever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you said, when you're about using characters that are local that might be inspired for a character in the book, you're memorialized or
Right.
whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
You live on
Right.
in these books.
Well, I just lost a good classmate, Gary Malbin. Okay, and Gary came back into my life a while ago, and anyway, in my book Troubled Waters, I made him a police officer,
Yeah.
and he was really cool police officer in that story. And so we've lost Gary now, but he's right there in that
Yeah,
book.
yeah.
Somebody wants to his sense of humor
Yep.
and all that, you can pick up on it right in that story. So he's
Yeah.
he's going to be around forever.
Yep. Are these available in public libraries?
Yes, I have them in the Skowhegan Library,
Yep.
and I have them in the Madison Library.
Yep. So if
Yep.
anybody wanted, from watching this, that was interested to read any of these and
Yep.
didn't know where to find one
Yep.
or couldn't contact you personally, which we'll put your information of how to get a book on screen, but you could just go borrow it at the library.
Absolutely.
And keep it for however long you need to.
Yep.
However long it takes you to get through it, and then bring it back.
In fact, I've got to deliver another Skowhegan Fair to the lady at Madison because somebody didn't bring it back after they read it.
Well, I didn't want to say keep it as long as you want, because as long as you bring it back.
Exactly, and so this last one will be in those libraries before I leave for the summer.
Yeah.
I don't put them in immediately because I'm hoping that they'll buy it,
Right.
But before I leave, we'll have them in those libraries.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good segue, a good thing to end on.
Okay.
These books are available in the library in Madison and both Skowhegan. Our Wesley Clement will be be present at a few events this summer. So we're really happy to have you back on. Glad to see you while you're in Maine, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your summer, and maybe we'll be seeing you at one of these events.
Excellent. Thanks so much. I will give my email address.
Yes.
If people do want to buy the book and they don't run into me this summer, they just need to go to rwesleyclement@gmail.com and just send me a blurb. I don't charge any postage.
Yeah.
I just put them in, they send me a check, and we're all happy.
Great. Well, I appreciate it, and thank you everybody, or thank you for coming, and thank you everybody for watching.
Thanks a lot, John.